Good morning, my friends, and welcome to today's discussion and training on the E.D.D cycle this week, which is the euphoria, distress, despair cycle that we experience when we're going through a seduction, abuse, discard cycle relationship. This is dominantly what codependents experience a lot of, whether or not you're in a narcissistic abuse relationship, whether it's a emotionally unavailable relationship, even in a healthy or a relationship with a healthy person, we're going to experience some of this euphoria, distress, and despair because we are wrestling with attachment injury. We're wrestling with our sense of emotional capacities and our skill set in being able to assess ourselves, have space for ourselves, and understand what is really going on. So this little three-step cycle we go through is universal for codependence. We really wrestle with this. It's a real challenge at times for us. And so, with that, let's get started. So I'm Marshall Burtcher, and if you're new to me, I help codependents rediscover their well-being, their happiness after narcissistic abuse, after relationships where they have felt discarded. And I help them heal the trauma bond that comes out of that so that they can discover, know, and live who they are and create happy relationships in their lives. So that's what I do. I do it because I've been through it myself. I've done this work. I am alive in this work. It's not something we can suddenly stop doing because, this doesn't happen anymore. It's more like, where are we going from, okay, I was codependent, into who am I now? So it's a continuous practice of self-discovery, authority, ownership, and accountability with ourselves. Before we get into the topic, I need to share this out to the community real quick. I just got to hit the right buttons today. Today is it's Wednesday. Yeah, see, I'm a little off today. There we go. Let's get this shared out to the community. Community is your safe haven here on the internet where you can find guidance, support, and shelter, and understanding in your experience as you exit the chaos of seduction, abuse, discard relationships. Begin to regulate the euphoria, distress, and despair you experience in these things and come to discover more about who you are and how to live who you are. Because I build relationships on the premise of this model called what, how, who equals result. And that's what we help you accomplish, help you understand what you need and what you want, how to get that met in healthy ways with the right people so you get the results you're looking for. That's the magic here. That's the life beyond codependency. So let me know. You're here in the comments. Let me know how you've been doing. And let's jump in. So yesterday we talked about euphoria. Euphoria is the state, it's the emotional, mental, chemical state of awe that we experience when we're being seduced by an individual. It is the fulfillment of fantasy, of being rescued, of being wanted, of being loved, of being seen, of having our core needs actually, fed and nourished. And that puts us into a chemical state, flooded with dopamine and oxytocin and serotonin, adrenaline, and cortisol. So we develop what's called fear love towards this individual. And euphoria creates within us a reference point about this person and about ourselves that we think is reality. We think it is the truth. And then things start to change. The person that once was so effusive with their affection, so invested with their attention, who gloated about us, who showered us with gifts and with love and with affirmations, is starting to criticize us, starting to ignore us, starting maybe to outright attack us emotionally, verbally, socially, publicly, sometimes physically or sexually. We start to notice that the things this person said they enjoyed and loved about us, they now despise. They start to question They start to question us. They start to cause us to question ourselves. We bring up a complaint. We bring up a concern. We bring up a request. And they attack it. They deny it. They turn it around on us and say, how dare you? Aren't you happy enough? You should be grateful you have me in your life. Or that's a problem you created. If you hadn't done that, I wouldn't have done this. Suddenly, they're not the person they showed up as. There's this different person starting to emerge out of this. And this is where I get to use some cool technology. What I call the glowy thing and the monster behind it. My friends, this is the challenge. I'm going to lock this so those grids can get out of the way. This is what's going on. See, in euphoria, we have the glowy thing. This is what attracts us to them. The glowy thing is the signal to us that we can find ourselves through this person. This is what we've been looking for all our lives through our parents. This is what's called unmatured identity and unmatured attachment. We're looking for a sense of ourself through others. External orientation is the term I use for that. And as a result of an unmatured identity, unmatured attachment with inside ourselves. So we look at that glowy thing and we think, I can finally find what I've been needing here in order to complete myself, in order to feel worthy, lovable, and whole. So we go for the glowy thing. And then the abuse starts. And that's when we start to see the ugly fish behind the glowy thing. This breaks our brains. Because what starts happening, I'm going to go back to this main view. What starts happening is our brain enters a state of what's called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a technical term for when the brain is experiencing two opposing truths that both cannot be true at the same time. One has to be false and one has to be true. This creates an enormous amount of distress in a human being. Because now they are divided. They are in big conflict with themselves. And if that brain has been experiencing a chronic neglect and abuse in its life, it doesn't have a strong anchor to its own validity, its own point of view, its own take on reality. It doesn't have what's called sovereignty of self integrated with it. That brain is going to go with what feels safest, not what is safest, but what feels safest. And in this case, it's reverting back to the euphoria. It's reverting back to the fantasy. Because the abuse paints a terrifying picture that, again, we are alone. We are unloved. We are unvalued. That we are not worthy. That we are being harmed. And the brain, its job is to keep you alive. That's job number one of brain. Survival. And it's going to choose what has the highest probability in its experience to keep you alive. So at this point, you go deeper into the freeze-fawn loop. And you fawn more and more to the abuser. Now, sometimes we don't necessarily freeze. Sometimes we have a fight-fawn loop where we'll fight with them and we'll get in their face and then they'll stop their behavior for a moment and then we'll fawn back into it because we think they changed and then they come back and do it again. Guys, abuse is the end of the relationship. Abuse is not a tolerable thing. Healthy people don't abuse. People with trauma, people with bad mental programming, bad skills, entitlement, victimhood, they abuse. I know, because I was one. So it doesn't mean they can't change. This isn't a discussion of possibilities. It's a discussion of reality and of taking care of your well-being. See, in codependency, we discard ourselves in order to keep that person because That's how we are used to surviving. It's like, well, I get myself up. I keep them around. I can keep these little breadcrumbs of love they give me. It's a funny thing about those breadcrumbs. Those are actually your breadcrumbs. See, this person has come into your home and convinced you that the feast on the table is theirs to have, and that you get whatever they deem you deserve in that moment. When in reality, that's your feast. This is your home. This is your territory. They're the ones who are there by privilege and by, ideally, consent. They have no entitlement to you, to what you have to offer. But because you've not been taught the brilliance of yourself, the worthfulness of yourself, what is really yours, you believe them. You don't have any reason not to. Plus, it feels really good for someone to give you a breadcrumb when you've been starving this whole time. So that's understandable why the brain goes, oh my word, who's this person now? What is going on? What is real? We lose contact with reality. We start to feel a little crazy. And this isn't just because of the split in who they are, how they're showing up. It's because they're gaslighting us about reality. They're convincing us that our feelings, our wants, our boundaries are wrong. They're selfish. They're abusive. They're the problem. They're the cause of their bad behaviors. They victimize themselves and make you the perpetrator. And that's DARVO. Deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. They get you to question your experience, which gets them into the position of authority so they can define the experience for you, which makes you dependent more on them and makes you an enemy to yourself. Then they start moving the goalposts. They change everything up on you. They move everything around. They're like, hey, I didn't ask for that. And if I did, well, now I want it different. And you were wrong for not knowing that. This creates chaos. They create chaos by changing agreements on the fly and not informing you. They create chaos by making choices and spending money and doing things that destabilize your safety and your well-being and your situations. And they expect you to live with it. And sometimes, a lot of times, they expect you to fix it. This chaos making keeps your brain in a triggered state. You can't fight it. You can't flee from it. So you got to deal with it. And it consumes your energy. It's exhausting. It's disempowering. And it allows them to continue to get away with their toxic and harmful behavior. And you sink farther and farther into this distress. Codependents, people that are the target of these types of people, we tend to internalize this as, I'm creating this somehow. Somehow, who I am or what I want or how I want it or what I need and how I need it is creating this chaos. So if I could just stop being myself, they'll stop behaving this way. We enter a cycle of trying to perfect ourselves according to the ideal we think they want. This is perfect for them because they're getting away with it. The realm of accountability and integrity don't exist. Instead, you're the problem and they're the victim, and nothing ever changes. Sometimes, because you're pulling away and you're sobering up to reality and you're like, I'm done because this isn't a me thing, this is a you thing, they'll feign empathy. They'll feign accountability. Like, oh, yeah, I could see I really screwed up there. I'm really sorry. I'm going to do it differently next time. You buy into it, and now you're sucked back in. That's a Hoover. That's getting you back into the seduction, because it's seducing when they'll own their behavior, right? But they're not owning it, because owning it isn't, oh, I did this. Owning it is, wow, I did this. I comprehend the impact it had on you, and here's what I'm going to do differently. And then they do it. My friends, the truth is in the pattern of the behavior. It isn't in the words. The words are not worth anything until they are backed up with behavior. And that is a persistent, not just a one-off, like, oh, I fixed it this time. It's a persistent change in behavior, and it's a persistent change in awareness that motivates that behavior. That's a result of someone who cares about the impact they have on people. That's a function of empathy. It's a function of self-awareness. And these are things that are not cultivated in narcissistic brains. They don't see the world that way. They look at accountability specifically as a victimization of themselves, as an attack. Hey, Zara, good morning. Yeah, we don't cause it. We can't cause it because we don't have the power to cause people's behaviors. They are the only ones that have power to cause their behaviors. Period. I don't make anybody do anything. They do the thing. Okay? That creates this very simple, very direct, very clear premise of accountability. Now, there is one kind of situation in which we don't have control of the behavior. Maybe there's a brain dysfunction. But the other one is, someone's threatening your life. Then you have to comply because you don't actually have consent. You have no power there. You're being coerced. But generally, having a want, having a need, having a boundary, having a complaint are zero reasons for attacking another human being. And this is why it's abusive. This is why their behavior is abusive, because it's irrational to the context. The impact is meant to control you. It's rather than to actually create or resume safety or establish a neutralization of a danger or anything like that. So abuse is a zero tolerance factor. We don't cause their behavior. They cause it based on their psychology and their history and their past, and they are accountable for it. Now, here's a trick with accountability, because it exists 100% of the time. Accountability is something someone receives from another person. So I receive accountability from person A about eating the sandwich or something. Okay, I receive it. When I receive it, I take ownership of what I've been given. I take ownership of that accountability because I did the thing. So accountability is the things that are about the things that I have done. And then the responsibility component is how I respond to that and to the impact I had on the other person. And that can be through empathy, that can be through repair, that can be through recompense, like paying for, doing something that offers restitution for the impact. But it's also, applies to positive things like, oh, wow, thank you. Gratitude for what was laid at my feet, that kind of thing, especially if it's a positive thing. Guys, we don't cause their behavior, they cause it. Which means we're also accountable for our behavior. Conscious or not, we're still accountable to it. It's like, oh, I'm accountable to this impact. This gets a little messy in abuse because a lot of times the abuser is going to make something that is not abusive, like you drawing a boundary, like you saying no, like you having a complaint, like you holding them accountable. Those are not things that are abusive. Period. That is the result of their behavior. It's the consequence that comes with the choices and actions they made. So in the distress dynamic, we lose contact with this because we're in this fawn state towards them. But here in the distress, it's extremely important to understand that it's also the big red flag. Red flags mean the relationship is over. Do not go forward in a relationship with this person. Red flags aren't things that need to be fixed. Red flags are things that should not exist in the relationship, or they harm your well-being and your happiness. So they're not things that need to be fixed. These are things that signal that the relationship is toxic to your long-term well-being and happiness. It's like if you walk into a field and you see like a radiation signal, you don't negotiate with it, right? The sign says, radioactive. You're not going to go, maybe I can work this out. No. You leave because it's destructive. That's what red flags are. Red flags mean this person's going to harm your well-being and your happiness based on the way they behave. Your job is not to change that. Your job is to respect it, and then to respect yourself. That's the purpose. The distress phase has two purposes. This is one of the primary purposes, is to wake you up and go, this is not how I want to be treated. See, the opposite of codependency is self-advocacy, is self-respect. Because codependency, we discard ourselves. Self-advocacy, we keep ourselves. And self-respect doesn't mean, I'm going to stand up to you and make you change. Self-respect says, wow, this is not the way I will be treated. I am out. It's having firm standards that guide your commitments, your vulnerabilities, where you invest your time, your energy, your intimacy, because those things are sacred. Those things are precious, and we respect them as precious. The individual respects those things first and foremost as precious, and then is very deliberate about whom they share them with. The goal here is to become discerning about the message of distress. Because in healthy dynamics, distress is not experienced. What happens in healthy dynamics is we'll have conflict. But then we're building security and intimacy through the conflict by understanding what each other needs through healthy communication. So that's the opposite. The other purpose of distress lies in the yard of the abuser. And their goal, conscious or unconscious, with the distress phase, is to keep you in chaos and keep you thinking you're the problem so they can continue to get away with what they want. And that is pulling you along, getting the supply, the cookie they want out of you, while they go out and do other things. They want to get away with it because that's how they think. They think they're entitled to get what they want, how they want it, when they want it. They don't have an intrinsic respect for the sovereignty of other human beings. They're just entitled little 3-year-olds, to be blunt. So the distress phase has certain signals that you want to keep aware of here. And I got a little list. So the first one is escalation of anxiety. You start to feel more and more anxious in the relationship. You start to feel more and more confused about what's really going on, because things are just not making sense here. You're feeling a lot more tension in the body. It just keeps going up. You might go through waves because, okay, went through that conflict. Now I got to understand, oh my God, the conflict is back. You get this weird cycle of repeating problems over and over because they never resolve. Why would they want the conflict to resolve? I mean, it keeps them in power and keeps you off your center. You have obsessive thoughts about how to fix things, how to change them, how to change yourself. And you're really obsessed in trying to get them back to the euphoric state, back to the seductor role. That's where you want to be because you think that's the truth. But again, my friends, it's the glowy thing. The truth is the big ugly fish behind it. We have to accept that the distress is revealing the truth of the relationship. It is the reality of it. It is not the exception of it. I'm blunt here. I'm blunt because we got to drive this home. Toxic dynamics in a relationship, if they are present, that is the truth of it. The glowy thing is not the truth of it. Healthy relationships don't have glowy things. They're just a beautiful fishy. That is what it's just a beautiful fishy. It's apparent what it is by the way it consistently behaves. It's only in toxic dynamics the glowy thing exists. And toxic dynamics involve narcissistic abuse. They involve emotionally unavailable people. They involve incompatibility sometimes. I mean, the glowy thing is the thing we have to be very mindful about because it's a fantasy. But when we really get to know someone, the whole person, We can see that they're not the ugly fish. Or we get to see that they are, and then we can leave. But we must not buy into the fantasy. What we must do is be conscious, be sober with ourselves about it. Because there's a fantasy in our relationships, there always is. We need to be identifying it, popping that bubble, coming back to reality, and assessing the relationship based on its patterns of behavior and how we feel about that pattern, how we feel about how we're being treated. That matters, because that's where the truth is. Other elements that show up in this, you're doing lots and lots of research, trying to understand them, trying to understand yourself, trying to make things work, going to classes, taking courses, reading books, trying to understand why they are the way they are, trying to figure out their trauma, trying to decode the Rubik's Cube that they be so that you can fix it. This is where our brilliance in analysis comes into play, but the problem is analysis doesn't create change. It doesn't solve problems. It just helps you understand the mechanics of what's going on. You can't change them because you're a powerless being. Only you have no power or authority to change anybody but yourself. Accepting them as they are is the first step to that. It's like, I accept that they are this way. Now I need to make decisions and take actions that favor my well-being and my happiness, not what favors my euphoria. Because our loyalty, the way out of codependency, relies on two core principles. Honesty. We have to be honest with ourselves about what's really going on. Honest about the reality of things. And the second one is loyalty to our well-being. This breaks us free of the seduction, abuse, discard cycle. It gets us out of the E.D.D cycle. And it helps us get back in contact with reality. So it's very, very, very important to be watching these signals. You got additional ones like growing depression. You're just starting to feel like you're stuck in a hole and it's getting deeper and deeper. Attempts to perfect or change yourself so you can keep them. That is codependency. That's a signal that you're in a relationship where you do not feel safe being yourself. Self-blame and assumptions you're the cause of their behaviors. Absorption of their feelings as a judgment of your worth as a person. So their approval and their rejection defines you. This is going to happen outside this cycle. This is a core component of codependent thinking, which is called external orientations. But be mindful of that, because that is something we work with it by becoming what's called internally oriented, self-referencing. Like, what do I feel about how they're treating me? Absorption. Okay, so a massive external orientation, seeing and defining yourself through their eyes. Body goes into a freeze-fawn loop. You're constantly freezing, and then, oh God, it's over. Thank you. We're really grateful that the conflict isn't happening anymore. We're really grateful for their kindness. We're really grateful for the fact they're not being abusive. Think about that for a moment. Gratitude that they're not being abusive is your red flag. You didn't hurt me this time, thank you. No, that's a fawn response. You never earned being harmed or even hurt. We don't earn it. It's not an acceptable, tolerable thing to be abused. You're having cycles of crying, of having panic, of having confusion. You're in the cycle at that point, deep into it. Growing sense of helplessness as your attempts to change things fail. Yeah, you're never going to win because they don't want that. That's not their goal. They do not want connection with you. They don't want things to work, even though they say they do. What they want, when they say those things, is they want you to comply to their expectations and stop getting on their back about the things they do that hurt and harm you. They want you to just be a slave to whatever they want, when they want it, how they want it. Ultimately, chaos. Things never really settle. There's no consistency in their reactions, in their behaviors and responses. Feel like you're walking on eggshells. Nothing's reliable. You live in fear as to what's going to happen today. They're at work. What's it going to be like when they get home? That is not a healthy relationship. It's a dictatorship. It's a terrorship. It's very important to be conscious of these signals, to understand and respect them, because they are the truth of it. So I've got some comments. Leandro shares, I call it truth lying. They are saying exactly what they know you want to hear in order to get you to back down. Yep. Yeah, they're just lying. They're just being the 3-year-old that says, okay, I won't put my hand in the cookie jar, and then 3 seconds later. Yep, they know how to get in your head. They know how to play. Well, you've given them the information too, though. It's not like they're mind readers. A lot of times we've given them this information. We've shared with them our delicate past, our traumas, our fears or insecurities, because we felt so seen by them. And now they weaponize that against us. They're very good at that. Hi, Aaron. You're very welcome. Yeah, we think it's wrong. We're the wrongness because they tell us that. That's one of the gaslighting elements. You're making me feel this way. No. You're not making anybody do anything. These are the cries of an immature person. These are the cries of someone who has no emotional integrity or fidelity. And this is not someone who will change because, honestly, because of their entitled victimhood, they see no reason to change. Right? Yeah. And then we put ourselves second. Like you're saying, we discard ourselves. No, we are first in order. There's a specific order in all relationships so that there's balance. I got scratchy there. You are me, and me then you. See, in narcissism, it's me, me, me. In codependency, it's you, you, you. In interdependence, it's me, then you. And the reason why is because I got to know what I want and what I think and what my capacities are, what I'm willing to consent to, before I can assess where you're at. That's the proper order, and it's not selfishness because I'm not taking something from someone that I think I'm entitled to, but I'm not. It's practicality. It's consent-based. It's based on permission and availability. Because guess what? No one's entitled to our resources, our body, our energies, our capacities, our gifts, our talents, our time, our focus, our space. Those are things we consent to share with someone else. They are based on privilege, because relationship is built on consent and privilege, not entitlement or obligation. So this, guys, the distress phase is your big wake-up call. For the codependent, it is taking accountability for the signal that you're seeing and then step out, man. Get out. If you missed the signals in the seduction phase, get out in the distress phase. But sometimes we can't do that. Sometimes we don't even know what's going on because we think this is normal. Oh man, did I think it was normal. I thought this is how relationships were. That I'm going to have the seduction moments, and then we're going to have the abuse moments, and then we're going to have the discard moments. And I'm going to have to learn how to live with this euphoria and then this distress and despair. And ultimately this real aching emptiness because I'm never really seen or valued or connected to in a relationship. I thought that was the way it was. I mean, we look at movies. That's what it's doing there. We look at reality TV. I look at my own parents. This is what they did. Oh, man, did they do it. So it's no wonder we think it's normal. We don't really have an alternative view. We didn't have an alternative experience. It may be normal, but it isn't healthy. It's actually quite abnormal because love doesn't harm. There isn't fear in love. Safe people don't inspire fear. They inspire safety. And we have a right to safety in our relationships. We do not have a right to change someone else so they feel safe. That person has to consent to that and then do the work. We don't have any power in that. Our job is to accept people as they show up and then make decisions that keep us aligned with our well-being and our happiness. Honesty, self-loyalty. So That's the distress phase, my friends. Be gentle with yourselves. It's easy to condemn ourselves with this. It's easy to say, well, man, I'm just stupid. I didn't see it. No, it's not about intelligence. It's about emotional needs. It's about attachment. It's about things that are deeper within you than you have awareness of that are motivating this. That's when we acknowledge that, that gives us power to then start changing how we get what we need. Because I approach relationships from this premise of what, how, who, result. Right now, your result's hell. That's because of how you're trying to get your needs met through the who you're working with. Often in codependency, we try to change either the how or the who without actually refining our skills to discover how we want what we want so it works, and then discovering a person who aligns with that. With the what, how, who model, you discover what's called functional compatibility. Codependency, we choose someone and then we try to change them into what we think they are or could be. And they love it because now they got all the reason to hurt you and harm you and take things from you and use you as supply. Plays right into the drama. So if you're struggling with this and you're looking for freedom from codependency, whether it's the discard, whether it's the distress, whether it's the seduction or abuse elements, or whether it's I've lost myself and I want to find myself, I want safer, more secure attachment in my world, I want to have my power back, I want to feel safe again, I want to make sanity out of reality again, the Heal Yourself strategy is how I can help you accomplish that. So the strategy is 24 classes. The live sessions start February 22nd. They'll end July 12th. And then you've got these advanced enhancement classes that'll start in the fall. So you get a lot of training in this. But really what I'm doing in it is I'm teaching you a practice to help you regulate your safety, restore sanity and reality in your life, and then restore yourself over those 24 weeks. So I'll be teaching you how to regulate attachment distress, teaching you how to regulate nervous system, anxiety and distress, teach you how to ground back into your body, how to hear your own voice, how to cultivate what I call innate value within yourself, how to be in your power so you know how to act, what a boundary is and how to execute it. Yeah. And how to know yourself, how to detect you. Gives you the foundation of your identity. That's what we're going to be doing here. It ultimately helps you heal the trauma bond so that you don't need to be codependent anymore. So live sessions start the 22nd of February. Enrollment closes for the live sessions on the 21st. Enrollment for the recorded sessions will open up here in March. The link is above on Facebook, below on YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Join us because there's over 50 other students active in this that we're doing this together. Come join us and let's rediscover who you are and restore your sense of safety, sanity, and self in your world so that you don't have to be codependent anymore. Instead, you can go on and discover your own happiness, discover more about who you are and how you work, and you can go on to create happy, healthy relationships, whether it's friendships, romantic relationships, business relationships, whatever it is you would desire in your world, because you intrinsically are worthy of that. So join us there. The link's above on Facebook, below on YouTube. If you have questions, feel free to either PM me about them, PM them to me, or you can get answers by going to the answers link in the description, which takes you to answers.freetheself.com. You can submit a question there, or you can join the community, or if you're already a member, ask it in there, and I'll be glad to answer it there. My friends, go gently with yourself in the distress phase. Use it to wake you up to reality. Because healthy relationships aren't going to put you through this chaos. They're going to have stability. They're going to have consistency. They're actually going to kind of be boring that way. But that's a good signal. Because you're not going to feel empty. You're not going to feel unseen. You're going to have space for creativity. Because boredom's the space for creativity. It's the space for discovery. It's the fuel for adventure in your world. So, okay. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being who you are. And remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping. And that you deserve well-being and happiness in your life. And I hope that I can help contribute to that adventure in your world. Okay, my friends, be safe. I will see you in our next discussion tomorrow, specifically on the last phase of the E.D.D cycle, which is despair, and what that is and how we can work with it to set you free. Okay. Be safe, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.